Consider supporting this channel for as little as $5 a month on Patreon. You can also commission future content for this game. Link is in the description. You can also send a one-time donation of any amount to this channel using PayPal. Link is in the description. Welcome to part 7 of everything I hate about the trucking industry. Here, I'm going to be building a replica of the Sawtooth Bridges as I explain something I hate about the trucking industry. This topic is likely large enough to take up a whole video. We'll be talking about some of the more pretentious people you might come across in this industry. In this video, I made a comment on a trucker forum explaining what a horrible time this industry gave me. We'll talk about some of the comments I got. But first, the Sawtooth Bridges are a group of bridges, switches, and interlockings located between Newark, Hoboken, and Secaucus. They are used to switch New Jersey Transit trains from Newark Broad Street to Hoboken, from Newark Broad Street to Secaucus, and then to New York City, from Newark to Hoboken, and from Newark to New York, and vice versa. It's also used for switching Amtrak trains between Newark and New York. This interlocking is owned and operated by Amtrak and is controlled by an interlocking tower known as CTEC 9. That interlocking tower controls all movement between New York and Newark and replaces another tower that used to control movement at Rahway Junction. Anyway, let's look at these comments. First, it should be noted that some of the comments by me and others were deleted by the moderators before I could screen capture them, so I'll talk about them now. One guy literally blamed me for the equipment being faulty. His exact words were, quote, "It's your fault the rollers didn't work." This guy was so insane, he even said, "It's your fault a customer climbed into the trailer and pushed everything on the floor." I kid you not, that was an exact quote from him. This crazy guy actually thinks other people's actions are your fault. If we were to use that guy's logic, everyone who's ever robbed someone at gunpoint should be released from prison because apparently it's your fault if someone robs you at gunpoint. This guy probably also thinks that it's not the fault of the owners of that building that collapsed in Miami for not properly maintaining it. It's the fault of the residents if we go by this guy's logic. On one windy morning when I was inspecting a school bus, I opened the emergency door to make sure it was working, and the wind snatched the door out of my hand, then slammed the door against the back of the bus. The wind hit the door so hard that a piece of the door mechanism broke. If we go by that guy's logic, I should have been able to control the wind. As we all know, it's your fault if you can't change the weather. If this was the trucking industry, I probably would have been fired for that. One guy was really offended that I would dare say anything bad about Werner Enterprises. He said, "I will not have you bad-mouthing Werner, but they can't defend themselves." Oh, the poor innocent trucking company. I feel so bad for them. There's no way they could make an accountant comment on my comments just as easily as I could. And there's no way they could just comment on one of these videos. They have absolutely no way of expressing their disagreement with what I'm saying. They had a chance to defend themselves when I filed a dispute against them, but they chose not to. I literally couldn't feel any less sorry for them if I tried. The guy accused me of lying about Werner falsely accusing me of willful malicious behavior. His argument was, well, I worked there and they never did that to me. That's a stupid argument because he still works there. Of course he wouldn't know if Werner would or would not do that. They haven't fired him. They fired me, however, and I'm saying Werner Enterprises will falsely accuse you of willful malicious behavior. That company is run by liars. They constantly lied to me while I worked there, and they lied about me after the fact. Let's compare his logic to reality, shall we? Imagine if I came back from Cape Hatteras Lighthouse at night and I said, I went to the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse and I saw the light rotating. Then this guy responds, well, I went there during the day and the light was not rotating. Therefore, you are a liar. That's exactly how this guy's logic works. A totally unrelated circumstance, and he can't understand why his experience was different. Also, he reminds me of the people Amazon pays to sit in the break room and say good things about them on social media in a pathetic attempt to debunk the rumors about them. That reminds me of a very hilarious commercial I saw. The woman says, I'm a middle-aged mom. When I heard the rumors about Amazon, I was scared. But I can go to the bathroom whenever I want. I literally can't watch that commercial without laughing my head off. I mean, technically, no one's gonna tell you can't use the bathroom, but no one's making that argument. The argument is that the units per hour they want you to meet are so strict, there is no time to use the bathroom. Also, the bathroom takes 5 minutes to walk to, and if it's closed for maintenance, the one on the other side takes an additional 5 minutes to walk to. By the time you get back, you've been off task long enough for the guy with the clipboard to come looking for you. Anyway, I didn't mean to offend that guy, but his feelings don't change the horrid experience I had at this company. One guy literally called me stupid for not knowing how to use a load bar, something no one in the trucking industry could be bothered to teach me. More on that later. Without further ado, here's my first initial comment. I titled this, Fed Up with the Trucking Industry. So, short story long, I'm quite fed up with the trucking industry. I drove for Werner Enterprises on the Family Dollar account. Then, I was fired in 3 months, couldn't get a job anywhere else in trucking, and eventually just gave up thinking, screw this, I'm gonna drive buses instead. First of all, the trucking industry is filled with stuff that just don't make no sense. When I was in truck driving school, the school was so overcrowded, the trainers couldn't focus on anyone. You got one attempt to try and back up the truck per day, then you waited for the rest of the day for another turn which would never come. Also, the trainer taught everyone aggressive driving techniques, and I and a lot of other students failed their first road test driving exactly like the teachers. For example, we were taught, and I know a lot of commercial drivers do this, that when making a 90-degree turn, if there's someone in your way, block them and make them back up. I got failed for this. They claimed I was about to hit that car, which was not true because I clearly stopped before hitting them. Why would they think I'd keep going when there was obviously a car there? Have they never seen a truck making a sharp turn? They drive like this all the time where I live. I don't know why this behavior was such a shock to my instructor. Compare that to training when learning how to drive a school bus, and it's way less chaotic. For one thing, they only train one person at a time, so you get plenty of attempts to learn how to back up. In fact, I was far more confident in my skills on the school bus road test than when being tested on how to drive a truck. I passed the road test in one try, while it took me 4 attempts when driving a truck. Normally, in every single job I've ever had, if you make a mistake, they tell you what you did wrong, how to correct your mistake, and give you a chance to correct yourself. For example, on my first day as a school bus driver, I accidentally took a student to the wrong school because that stop was used for multiple routes and I didn't know everyone yet. They told me, from now on, ask each student which school they're going to make sure you're picking up the right person. I corrected that mistake and never had a similar problem. On the contrary, in the trucking industry, if you make one mistake, they'll tell you what you could have done differently, then fire you, without giving you a chance to improve. Then, no matter how many companies you apply at, not a single one will hire you. You never get a chance to learn from your mistakes. Well, if you don't know how to report an accident, your trainer failed you. Then they fired me. When I was in truck driving school, a lot of my classmates said, I don't want to drive precious cargo, but I'm telling you, driving a school bus is eons easier than driving a truck, especially since your trainer isn't asleep while you drive. Before I go any further, here are a few common tropes I've noticed with people in these forums. If you failed in the trucking industry, they'll automatically assume a few things about you. They assume you're stupid, a liar, a screw-up, lazy, someone who thinks the world revolves around you, or someone who ignores orders and warnings. They also have a habit of ignoring the parts of the story they think are fake, then inserting their own fictional events in its place and saying, "That's why you lost your job." If you disagree and try to clarify what happened, they'll delete your comment. They also have a habit of saying everything that happened is your fault without explaining how it's your fault. I mean, if it is my fault, I'm genuinely interested in knowing how to correct myself, but they never elaborate on how it's my fault, so I never know what I could have done differently. What's also worth noting is my sister tried to comment, but they deleted her comment. They likely assumed I was pretending to be someone else so I could go, "See, someone else agrees with me." They also have a habit of accusing me of things they're doing, which reminds me of my experience as a yard truck driver, when people kept running stop signs and accusing me of running the stop signs. Anyway, here's the next comment. This one's apparently by a moderator. Hey guys, we allowed this first time post from Jonathan because we thought it might encourage some helpful dialogue. Trucking is not for everyone, and the training is almost always hurried and short. It requires a lot of personal responsibility and a unique ability to keep a cool head under pressure. Jonathan's experience also included his first professional driving job being a dollar account. You all know how we discourage that. Please feel free to comment on this topic. I don't really want to see a bunch of folks bashing Jonathan, but I think we can have some constructive conversation on some better ways to start a trucking career. We deleted a few of his remarks where he was mostly trying to get some hits on his YouTube channel. No, I was not trying to get more hits on my YouTube channel. I ran out of characters way before explaining everything that happened. I thought it would be quicker to just share videos where I explain it in full detail. I mean, I don't make these trucker rant videos for money. They don't get that much. My hope is that people will have a good idea of what they're getting themselves into. So right off the bat, we already have a few false accusations coming my way. That being said, a few things about this post surprised me. This is the first time that someone said outright that choosing a dollar account as your first driving job in the trucking industry is not a good idea. Usually when I explain my experience with the family dollar account, they just call me stupid and say that's why I had a bad experience. They tend to think that anyone who's had a bad experience is just a failure. At first I was pleasantly surprised, but some of these subsequent replies were exactly what I expected, so that surprise didn't last long. Let's continue. This person then asks, explain to this neophyte or newbie what a dollar account is, please. I don't have anything to comment on this, obviously. I only bring it up because in the future, this person goes on to make the assumption that since I made one mistake while driving a truck, I shouldn't be allowed to drive a bus 3 years after the fact, even though I already said that people compliment me on what a good job I do frequently. Either way, this guy then goes on to explain what a dollar account is. Working a dollar account means you are a dedicated driver who only drives to multiple locations of one particular customer. That might be Dollar General or Family Dollar or even Dollar Tree. These are really tough due to unusually tight backing maneuvers and hand unloading your freight at multiple locations with no loading docks. You may unload 80,000 pounds of boxes per week. It is not a good job for a rookie. Jonathan doesn't tell us why he got fired. He conveniently left that out. But I can assure you the reason he got fired is also the reason he couldn't get a job anywhere else in trucking. Conveniently left that out, am I right? I explained the events leading up to me being fired in the videos, but you deleted the links to them. They deleted the part where I explained how I got fired, then accused me of deceiving them by not telling how I got fired. That's the kind of dishonesty I've come to expect from the trucking industry. As frustrating as that was, I wasn't surprised. Now let's look at the next comment. This guy asks how long I was in the industry. Not sure why that's relevant. This guy explains more about dollar accounts. With two important differences. One, while Cisco, McLean, etc. will hire drivers with limited experience, dollar stores actively prey on new drivers with no experience. If you search, you will see many posts from drivers right out of CDL school who were approached with offers to drive for dollar accounts with no experience. The new driver thinks it's their lucky day because of the higher starting pay, not realizing the skill required or the danger involved. Too often they back into things and find themselves fired with several incidents on their DAC and only a few weeks of driving experience. As the original poster states, finding another driving job after that is a challenge. 2. Dollar stores run a tight schedule and many of their stores are standalone with small parking lots. Restaurants are usually next to other businesses, so they tend to share a larger parking lot, giving more room for a truck to maneuver. Putting a rookie in a funky backing situation while the clock is ticking is a recipe for disaster. Oh yeah, that's another complaint I forgot to mention. If you arrive at a store late, they punish you by making you sit in the parking lot for 24 hours. Like, do you want the product or not? And why do these companies specifically prey on rookie drivers? Are rookie drivers the only ones who can be tricked into these accounts? There should be a law preventing companies from hiring drivers with zero experience for jobs that should require more experience. When I started driving a school bus, they started me on a simple route, driving a minivan to pick up one student, then taking them to a school 20 miles away. After a while, they added 2 more students to the route. Then, after a while, I was given a bus route. I think the trucking industry should do something similar. The main problem of the original poster is generalization. Although his school and work experience is true and unique, it cannot and should not be extrapolated to other schools and companies. I was a student at NETTTS in North Andover, Massachusetts, and can say that everybody got as much training and practice as he wanted, and testing was scheduled only when a student felt that he was ready. The passing rate was over 85% for sure. Another thing that I strongly disagree, as someone who was fired from a large company after 2 weeks of solo driving, is that no one will hire you after such a fiasco. It took me only a week to land a good local job, and even when I was fired again, this time after 3 months, Western Express offered me a regional job at 55 cents per mile, which is not bad at all. So there is absolutely no point in falsely claiming that all schools are bad and no company will hire you once you made a mistake. Okay, quick question to anyone watching this video. Did I say every single truck driving school is bad? This is another example of them putting words in my mouth. I never made the argument he's describing. Also, he claims it's totally possible to get another job in the trucking industry. If that's true, why is it that every single company I called or applied at either turned me down, hung up on me, or didn't get back to me? If what he's saying is true, then I guess some people can get a job after being fired. That doesn't change the fact that I couldn't get one though. Also, I went to a different school and I didn't have the same experience is a strange argument. I never made the argument that the school he went to was bad. I can't know because I can't afford to go to Massachusetts. Imagine if I came back from the Cape Lookout Lighthouse and said, the lighthouse I went to had black and white diamonds on it. Then this guy comes along and says, I went to the Cape Ann South and Thatcher Island North lighthouses, and they did not have black and white diamonds. Stop lying to everyone about lighthouses. Like, no one made that argument. What are you talking about? I went to a truck driving school and had none of Jonathan's problems. I made mistakes and still passed the test the first time. In training at my first company, we started with 20 plus trainees and we're down to 15 after day 1, mostly due to drug tests. We graduated about 8 and 2 were being retested. I couldn't believe how many extra chances this mega carrier, Schneider, was giving people. I made mistakes there too and did not get fired. I firmly believe one thing I learned elsewhere but was driven home right here that made the difference. Positive attitude. When you have desire, willingness to learn, and a positive attitude, people can teach you skills. Thanks, Trucking Truth. Basically, his argument is, I went to the Cape Lookout Lighthouse and it had black and white diamonds. Yeah, well, I went to the Cape Ann South and Thatcher Island North lighthouses, and I've had a different experience, therefore, you are a liar. I mean, it makes about as much sense as his argument. Funny how he mentioned Schneider, since I also applied there, and they turned me down. Also, I was willing to learn, so apparently that wasn't good enough. This guy particularly gets on my nerves. He accused me of being a liar and always had rude things to say to me. With all due respect, I have to call BS on that particular statement. No trainer I've ever encountered taught aggressive driving techniques to anyone. Quite the opposite. In fact, if there was one common denominator with trainers, it was safety, caution, and defensive driving. I believe the 90-degree turn being referenced is what is called a button hook. We practiced this numerous times, and done correctly, no other vehicles are blocked or forced to back up. This guy must be lying. There's no way he never saw anyone use the oncoming lane in an intersection. The rest of his comment is pointless because it's just, well, I went to a different place and had a different experience. Oh, but I believe he did tell why he was fired. Bottom of the next to last paragraph, he says, well, if you don't know how to report an accident, your trainer failed you, then they fired me. I dare to say he had an accident and didn't report it, which is why nobody else will touch him. The first incident I've ever had was when I backed into a Family Dollar store. I didn't know what to do. I asked the customer what to do and they said, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. I would later find out that this is a trap. Even if the other party says don't worry about it, you should still report what happened. Later on, when I was called to the office for a different incident, someone hit me at a truck stop while I was stationary and it damaged the plastic frame around the mirror. They explained to me, even if it's minor, you should report every accident, especially when there's damage. I learned from that mistake. Later, when I hit a tree branch in a Family Dollar parking lot, the customer said, don't worry about it, to which I replied, no, I need to report all accidents. Seeing how I still got fired, apparently learning from my mistakes wasn't good enough. Since they deleted the links to the videos that would have provided better context, I decided to comment again with more info. No offense, but you've clearly never been to Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Here we have all kinds of intersections that are so narrow, the stop line is moved further back. Cars always ignore this line and drive all the way up to the corner. This means if a truck needed to make a turn onto that road, the car is too far up, so the driver will usually drive as far as they can, make the car back up, then continue making the turn. I'm surprised there are drivers who have never heard of this, because this happens all the time where I live. The intersection of Northampton Street and Pennsylvania State Road 512 is a good example of this. Here's a Google Map link so you can see what I mean. As for the reason why I was fired, I mentioned that in the videos I linked, but I guess you can't link YouTube videos here, so I'll type out everything instead. First off, I'd like to point out that it costs $0 to become a school bus driver. On the contrary, truck driver school put me in a special amount of debt I didn't think was possible. It costs $10,000, $6,000 with $4,000 interest. Normally, I'd walk away from that kind of debt, but they assured me you'll only have to pay $25 per week for a year and the company will pay the rest. I think it's safe to say, with all the money you'll be making, you'll easily afford $25 per week. That is what sold me. Except even though I signed something allowing them to take $25 per week out of my paycheck, it wasn't coming out. All this time I thought the tuition was being paid, but when I finally got home after training and went through all my mail, I got a letter from the loan company claiming that nothing had been paid. The $25 wasn't automatically coming out, and Werner wasn't paying their part either. I now owed $300 per month, which was too much with other bills I had. Now, how they sold me on the Family Dollar account is as the people above have said. They didn't tell me at all how difficult it would be. They offered me more money than I've ever seen in my life, nearly $2,000 per week, and promised me every weekend off. I thought, wow, I thought truck drivers were never home, but they're offering me weekends off? I could work on my YouTube channel during the weekend and drive trucks the rest of the week. They didn't tell me I'd be backing in tight areas. If they had, I'd decline. I'm a cautious individual and wouldn't purposefully choose such a risky option as my first driving job. They said it was a roller account. I thought it would be easy, thinking about my then current job at FedEx Ground unloading trailers. At FedEx Ground, the trailers have rollers built into the floor. The trailer is backed onto a ramp. You place a product on a roller and it rolls downhill to the back of the trailer and onto a conveyor belt. I thought, well, I already do that for a living, so that'll be easy. I also assumed I'd be driving from warehouse to warehouse, thinking, no way they could fit a truck in those tiny parking lots. Imagine my surprise when I made my first delivery. The rollers are not built into the floor. They are 10-foot, 50-pound segments that have to be carried off to the truck and into the trailer. Why would you do it this way? It's so inefficient, I thought to myself, but tried to make it work. Most of the rollers didn't roll, so the product would get stuck. Most of the rollers were bent, so the product would just fall on the floor. Most of the rollers wouldn't attach to each other, so the product would snag on one. Meanwhile, you have customers saying things like, hurry up, why is it taking you so long? It's never taken anyone as long as it's taking you. You should just quit, you don't know what you're doing. One day, a customer walked into the trailer and put a bunch of product on the line saying, why do you keep putting one on at a time? I tried to explain to her because the rollers are bent, so if I put multiple on the line, they'll just push each other onto the floor. I have to guide each one individually so they won't fall. She didn't listen, gave the product in the back one big push, then everything fell on the floor. She then yelled at me, this is your fault, clean this mess up. When I complained to the company about the rollers, they pointed me to a trailer where they store rollers. I checked every single roller in that trailer and all of them were worse than mine. I only had one good roller and it was stolen from me at a truck stop in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. One comment, which seems to have been deleted, called me presumptuous that I would dare think I know of a better way than the company to get a job done. He obviously didn't read the part of my comment where I explained that I had previous experience at a company that did the job more efficiently. That's why I felt I knew of a better way to do it. I'm still confused as to how you can have years of experience driving a truck and have never seen an intersection so narrow you need the oncoming lane when making a sharp right turn. Anyway, the next comment just says they're glad they came to this site before becoming a truck driver. This is going to be the last comment I cover for now because the video is getting kind of long, but there's plenty of comments left, so stay tuned for more episodes.